Hi guys, so I'm back. Today I thought, because I have some makeup on and, real clothes, not sweatpants, I thought I would sit down and tell you guys a little bit about my IUI journey. I was initially gonna pull out my notebook and talk about all my notes from my IVF meetings, but I thought that was putting the cart before the horse because, I do have a 10-month-old and he is an IUI baby. So I thought we'd start there. So I am filming this in October of 2020. My son will be 1 on December 3rd. And to kind of tell my whole IUI story, it's not just about the one round where I got pregnant with my son. It's about the 5 rounds before that. So I started fertility treatments. I started like the whole process in March of 2018. So over 2 years ago at this point. And February of 2018, I saw my regular OBGYN. I told her that I wanted to pursue single motherhood with donor sperm and IUI. And she was like, well, that's great. I don't do that here. Let me direct you to this organization. And she directed me to one of the organizations here in Massachusetts. I have a lot of love for them, so I may put a link to them down below. I'm not 100% sure. And she sent me to them. I met the doctor there on March 1st of 2018, and I brought my mom because that's what you do when you're 22 and starting fertility treatments. You bring your mom. And she and I went to this office and we sat down with him. The doctor's amazing. I love him so much. And he asked me, why are you doing this? What do you want out of this? When do you want to start? Kind of thing. So I told him, I've always wanted to be a mom. I'm finishing up my master's program. At that point, I was getting my master's in public administration, and I was graduating that May. So it's March. I had 2 months to graduation. And I said, I'm graduating. I have a plan for my life. I'm going to get this job. I had been working with a nonprofit for many, many years and had been in talks of getting a full-time job with them, which, spoiler alert, didn't work out. But that's not the point here. And I'm like, I just don't see the point in waiting. I know that the older you get, the more your fertility declines. I know that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, and I know that that can impact fertility. And I'm just, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to be a mom. And I had my mom's support. My mom told me, stay living with me, get the hang of motherhood. We'll work from there. So the doctor, I guess, liked what he heard. I told him that I wanted to do IUI. I told him I wanted to get donor sperm. He was like, do you have a donor? I said, nope. He gave me some pamphlets on different cryobanks. Yeah, comment down below if you want to hear about this, but I think I'm going to do a video where I talk about my donor process, like my donor selection process. I did use California Cryobank, so I will talk about my experience with them because I really did like them. I'm not going to talk about my specific donor, I'm not going to give his donor number. I think that's kind of weird and he doesn't donate anymore. But I will probably do a video talking about how I picked my donor and what went into that thought process, because I don't know if I did it the right way, but I had a very specific thought process I went through to pick my donor. And yeah, so back to the point, the doctor, he gave me pamphlets on that. He gave me some financial information because everything with IUI was out of pocket. My insurance, I had to do 6 cycles of self-pay IUI before they would pick up anything. So I paid for everything out of pocket. I'm not sure that I'll do a video on that, but if you do want to hear that, let me know that too. Like the costs of IUI, because it was a lot of money. I had been saving for years. It basically drained my savings account. But yeah, so he gave me all that information. He set me up for different appointments, and you work your cycles and your blood tests and all the other tests you do around your period. So he's like, we're going to do this test, this test, this test. Call us on day 1 of your cycle. So that was a couple weeks later. I think it was like 2 weeks later, something like that, that I called them. I'm like, hey, it's day 1 of my cycle. What am I supposed to do? And I don't know if this is everywhere, but at least for me, the first test they do is they get like your baselines. So they have you come in on day 3 of your cycle, so the 3rd day of your period, and they do an internal ultrasound and they do blood work. And they do that to get like your baseline hormone levels. I guess your hormones are at their lowest point on day 3. So they want to know like what we're working with baseline and what we're building from. Basically the foundation. And like how many follicles you start out a cycle with and what your lining looks like and all that good stuff. So they do that on day 3. From there, he wanted to do a couple more tests on me. I forget what this test is called, but I will put it somewhere either down below or somewhere on the screen if I can figure that out, because I'm new to editing. But it is this procedure where they make sure your fallopian tubes are clear, and they inject this dye into your uterus and like through your tubes. And you can like see it, like they show it to you on an ultrasound screen basically. And it just shows like this dye in your tubes just to make sure that they're not blocked. And fun fact, my mom actually had that procedure right before she got pregnant with me, and she credits that procedure for her being able to get pregnant with me because there was a blockage in her tube and that dye cleared her tubes. Fun fact. So I'm here because of that procedure. But no, so he did that procedure on St. Patrick's Day 2018. And that also happened to be the day that my mom got inducted into her new job. She works for the state, and she got this really big, important promotion. So my whole family was home that day. I was off of work. My brother was off of work. His girlfriend was off. My dad was off. We were all home. She was at work because she had to be there that day, and then she was getting inducted that afternoon. So I didn't know if I could drive myself to that clinic. Like, I didn't know if I could drive home because I didn't know the procedure. So my dad drives me. He's sitting in the parking lot. I go get that done, and you leak the dye for the rest of the day. So I have to look like really nice. I'm going in front of like state people and at my mom's ceremony, and I'm all dressed up. I've got heels, I got a dress, I look super cute. And I have this like giant pad on because I'm leaking blue dye. It was just a very weird day. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, this so better be worth it. Newsflash, it is. So he did all these tests. They were done by the end of March. And, you know, they all came back really good, all of this. And my follicle count was great. I was 22, so my follicle count was really great in general, but also as a 22-year-old, it was great. And he was like, so when do you want to start this? And I had made my mom a promise that I was going to graduate first. So I'm like, can we start it in May or June? And he's like, yeah, call me, call our office during that cycle. We'll start it. So in that time, I think it was April or May, I finally picked my donor. I bought a bunch of vials because California Cryobank, they have a process that if you buy a certain number of vials, you get a certain amount of free storage. So I bought what I needed to get the free storage. And because my doctor told me to buy a certain number, he was pretty confident at that point that we were going to get pregnant. I was going to get pregnant in about 3 cycles. He said it's usually not the first, maybe the second or the third. I'm like, all right, I got this. And I guess I went into this kind of naive. I went into this thinking, well, I'm 22, I'm young, I'm healthy. Other than obesity, I am plus size. I do have obesity, but other than that, I'm a really healthy person. And I'm a gastric surgery patient, but that's, beside the point. But that does contribute to my health. And I'm like, I'm healthy. I've never tried to get pregnant. It can't be that hard, right? Like, no offense, but like teenagers do this by accident. My best friend did this by accident. So like, can't be that hard. I was naive. Okay. I was. So I graduated on May 20th of 2018 and my period had been before that. So I didn't do a May cycle. I did a June cycle. And the June cycle comes around. I got my hopes up. I think everybody does this when you do fertility treatments. I don't think it's just me. I read like on blog posts and stuff that other moms were doing this, but like every day post IUI, I was like, oh, this could be a symptom. My boobs kind of hurt. I feel really nauseous today. Like I wanted these symptoms so badly that I thought I was having them. And then 2 weeks after, it was a Saturday. I don't even remember the date. It was like the very end of June or the very beginning of July. And they called me and they were like, yeah, unfortunately it was negative. Sorry, kind of deal. Call us when your period starts. That was like 2 days later. And we started it all up again. I will say, so my first round, I did medicated cycles. All 6 cycles were medicated. My first round of IUI, I did with letrozole. I don't remember my dosage, but I found out that I'm allergic to letrozole. I got a really massive rash on my chest that it looked like I had acne on my chest. It was all red. There were bumps, hives, super itchy. I got really bad acne on my chin. It was awful. It was a horrible experience. And it wasn't even worth it because it didn't work. But I did have a really good size follicle at that point. It was like a 20. And, it was not a successful cycle. And then because of the allergic reaction I had in July of 2018, when we started that cycle, he put me on Clomid. So I did 25 milligrams of Clomid. So 1 pill is 50. So he put me on a half a pill of Clomid every day for 5 days. And I was really lucky, knock on wood. I have a wood table right here. I never had adverse reactions to Clomid in any of the time I was on it, which was great. Because of my age and because we didn't want to risk multiples, he did start me off on the lowest dose. 25 is the lowest dose you can do. And the July cycle did not work. Neither did August. We did 25 for both of those cycles. In September, he also did 25, and we were constantly monitoring. September was a bad cycle. We ended up canceling that cycle because on the 25, I did not get, I didn't get a follicle that got big enough. I had one that I think it was like 15 or 16 at the ultrasound, like at the last ultrasound before what they thought was going to be ovulation. And that's not big enough to induce ovulation. They want them 18 plus. So 15, 16 was not big enough. They said, let's wait 2 days and look at it again, see if it's grown. Well, in that 2-day period, my body naturally ovulated that 16 millimeter egg follicle. And so the doctor called me. He called me himself. He didn't have a nurse call me. And he's like, we don't have a follicle this cycle that's big enough. We have like a 10, and a 10 isn't going to get anywhere. We're almost at the end of the month. It's just not happening. So we're going to wait for your next period, and we'll do, cycle number 4. I call September like 3.5, and then October was cycle number 4, and we'll up your dose at that point. So October of 2018, I got my period, and we started on 50 micrograms, I don't know what it is. 1 pill, a 50 pill of Clomid. And I did that for the 5 days from 3 to 8. And I could feel it working. I had a follicle on each side. I had one on the right, one on the right, one on the left. And the one on the left was getting to be a really good size. The one on the right was just a little bit smaller, but they were both really good sizes. And I think it was a Sunday. So it was November 4th. I went in and did an ultrasound that morning, super, super early that morning, because I used to work on Sundays. So, and I used to work early on Sundays. I worked at 8 a.m. So I was there at, I think it was like 6:30 or 7 to get my blood work and ultrasound. And they called me later at work, and they were like, they're both great sizes. We're going to do the trigger shot tonight, and we're going to, do the IUI tomorrow, Monday the 5th of November. So we had a plan. And I will mention that every cycle I did, like, on average, it was about 3 days of blood and ultrasound before the IUI itself. And it was like every other day. So it would start on day probably like 11 of my cycle, 11, 12. They would do blood and ultrasound to like see where they were. And then like 2 days later, they would look again. And it was usually like, it was between 2 and 4. So it was on an average like 3 ultrasound and blood works per cycle. And they were always super early in the morning. I would do them, and then I would go to work. And luckily at this time, my job, every day but Sundays and Fridays, I was working at noon. On Sundays, I was working at 8 a.m. And on Fridays, I was working at 10:30. So I had the time in the mornings that I could do what I needed to get done. So, yeah, November 4th, they call me, they tell me what we're going to do. I'm a scaredy cat. I do not like giving myself shots. So thank God for my mom. She could give me a shot like nobody's business. So I went home. I always did a trigger shot. This is just my first time mentioning it. It's usually about 36 hours before your insemination, but it's not always. Like, that can change just depending on where your body is naturally and where your levels are naturally. So at that point, my body was getting ready to ovulate anyway. So this was just going to time it better. So she gave me the injection at like, I think it was like 10 o'clock at night. And it was somewhere around like 9:30 or 10 o'clock on Monday morning that I had the insemination. So I went to the clinic. I did the insemination, and this cycle number 4, I could tell immediately that something was different. And you'll think I'm crazy, because I said it, my family thought I was crazy. I said for 3 cycles before that, oh yeah, I'm totally pregnant this time. But this one I knew. The Wednesday before. So my blood test was 2 weeks after insemination. It was on November 19th. So whatever that Wednesday before was, I remember having so much boob pain starting that day. And I am not someone who experiences that. That's just not one of my PMS symptoms or anything like that. But I was experiencing it. My boobs were killing me. And I was exhausted. And I could just tell. And I remember calling my mom on the phone that morning. Dude, I think I'm pregnant. And she's like, you're not. You might be, but like, you can't know that yet. It's way too early to know that. You would only be like 3 weeks pregnant, technically, in a 40-week cycle. You're 3 weeks pregnant at that point. And I'm like, no, I am. I know it. So I didn't test. With my first 3 cycles, I bought like at-home pregnancy tests, and they always came back negative. So I said with that cycle, I'm done testing at home. I'm just gonna, wait for the blood test. I had 1 test left in my drawer. Let me put that out there. There was 1 test left in my bathroom from August that I hadn't taken. So it was there, and it was mocking me. And I was like, I know I'm pregnant. I know if I go and take this test, it's going to say I'm pregnant. But I didn't do it. So on Monday, November 19th, I went and had the blood work done. And it's the same phlebotomist that did my blood work every time. I would talk to her. She was super sweet. And she said, well, when this comes back positive, I'm going to celebrate with you. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's so going to be positive. And so they called me. I did that blood work like super early in the morning. It was like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, probably 7. And they called me. I was at work when they called me. So it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock. And they called me and they told me I was pregnant. And they said, congratulations. Your levels are, I want to say it was an 18. Your HCG level is 18 point something. And I was so excited. Sorry. So anything over 5 is considered pregnant. But they told me that 18 is really low, and it could just mean that I'm brand new pregnant, like late implantation. So we were cautiously optimistic. And they told me to come back in 2 days and do another blood test. And if the levels had gone up, it was a good pregnancy. If the levels had gone down, it was technically a chemical pregnancy, which is really just an early miscarriage. So that Wednesday would have been 2 days. That was the day before Thanksgiving. And I get in a car at 3 a.m. on that morning and drive with my mom and my brother. Not my brother that year. He was driving with my uncle. So my mom and I were driving from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania. A 10-hour drive. So when they tell me to do the blood test again, I'm like, can I do it at a Quest lab in Pennsylvania? And they said yes. So we drove all the way to Pennsylvania. We didn't even see my family first. We went straight to a lab. I got my blood drawn and they sent it off. And we were with my aunts, and I get a call from the doctor's office, and they're like, did you do your blood work today? Because we still don't have anything. And I said, yeah, I did it. Is it not there yet? And they're like, nope. So we probably won't get it till Friday. Still stay cautiously optimistic. And then they called me on Friday and told me my levels had gone down to 15. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing of this because there's a lot more to this story, and it's a really long story. But I started bleeding on November 24th, and they kept having me come in and do my blood, and my blood kept going up. So eventually they evaluated me they did a biopsy. There was no no sac, no baby, no nothing in my uterus, but my levels were still going up. Because of that, they evaluated me for an ectopic pregnancy. And to this day, that's the diagnosis I had from that experience. It was a presumed ectopic. And they gave me a methotrexate injection to end that ectopic pregnancy because they're non-viable. And I was officially, my levels had bottomed out on January 2nd, 2019. So technically, I was pregnant from November to January, even though that was an ectopic experience. We'll get into that. I will talk about my ectopic pregnancy and dealing with that. But after that, my doctor wanted me to wait 2 periods before we did another cycle. So he considered all the bleeding I had through like December, January, because I was bleeding almost continuously from like the beginning of December to January 3rd or 4th. He considered that, you know, one cycle. So the end of January, I had another period, and he said, okay, in February, we can start. So February rolls around. We do a cycle. I'm inseminated on February 15th. And I said to myself, you know, this is going to work. I'm going to have a November baby. It's going to be great. The world wouldn't let me go through all of that loss. My ectopic pregnancy, I called that baby Jude. Obviously did not know whether it was a boy or a girl. I had a gut feeling it was a boy. So I do refer to that baby as Jude. If you ever hear me talking about that, that is my Jude. So I was very positive going into this cycle number 5. And I was like, you know, the world isn't going to let this happen to me. It's not going to let me go through what I went through with Jude and then not get pregnant. But it happened. I didn't get pregnant in cycle 5. So cycle 6 starts March 1st of 2019. My period started, and that was the day I was going in for my blood test to tell me whether I was pregnant from cycle 5. I got my period on my way to the blood test, so I'm crying the whole way to the blood test. I know I'm not pregnant. Hi. Today's Friday, March 1st. It's been 2 weeks today since my insemination, and I went and had my blood work done this morning right before I left the house to do said blood work. I got my period, so I know it's negative. I'm tired and I'm heartbroken. Cried all the way to the doctors. I don't get it. I don't get how life can keep kicking me in the teeth like this. I don't know what I did to deserve this. I don't know. I just don't know. They called me to tell me I wasn't pregnant. I'm like, I know, today's day 1 of my cycle. So they started everything up again that day. And long story short, because my son is awake, I have to go. On March 15th, I was inseminated for cycle number 6. During that time, I guess my doctor was no longer optimistic, even though he had upped my dose at that point to 100. So we had doubled my dose. I was taking 2 pills a night of Clomid. He had doubled my dose. I don't think he was optimistic. I wasn't optimistic. I had actually started like their online training modules for IVF. And then on March 29th, I went in for my blood work and my levels were 200 and something. And they were like, congratulations, you're pregnant. And flash forward 9 months later, and I had my beautiful baby boy. I know I really rushed into that part. I am going to talk about my pregnancy, but like I said, my son just woke up. So we will talk more about this. And yeah, definitely comment below. Tell me your stories. Ask any questions. I will definitely talk more about my IUIs. And I gotta go because he's crying. Bye.